blessed is the man. And you're like, who doesn't walk in the way of the wicked? And you're going with it. Because it's saturated in your heart, not, oh yeah, I've got the 4 points that Pastor said that were really helpful. I'm not demeaning myself, but I would much rather you get the method of what we're about here. Okay. I'm pumped up about this. I hope you guys are too. If I ran out of handouts, does anybody not have at least? Okay. Anybody else that?
Who needs one?
Who else needs one? Actually,
we got one.
you can just take the whole binder.
Okay, he's got one.
If you're interested in a binder, I'm not forcing anybody to have a binder. Don't think this is like, wow, the teacher's taking his homework already. But if it helps, for those of you that.
That's right. Yeah.
Thanks, sir. If you want that, so that you can tuck all of only the 11 that we're doing, but tuck the 11 that we're doing over the summer, keep them, again, that not so that you can necessarily go back and think other people's notes were awesome, but so that you can track the method that is helping us understand and see what God is doing in His Word.
Or you do all 150.
Or you can do, that's the Jeff Siren method, and I'm
This is from the Biscuit Club.
encouraged by that.
Like 2 years.
So that over the life of, I calculated it out, and I'm afraid of doing public math almost all the time because I'm an English teacher. But if we do 11 Psalms every year, summer, which that's not me saying that we're going to, but if we do that, it will take how many years for us to get through all 150? Like 14, 15 years. Okay, so we'll get it done. Some of us will be in the choir
Some of us do.
eternal by the time that happens. But we'll get it done. All right, let's pray and then we can dive into God's Word here in a second once my technology works. God, you're so gracious. You have revealed yourself to us, and now we get to come and sit under your Word and hear what your people have learned from you, how they have praised you, and how they have fed and meditated deeply on your Word. I pray that the words that you have inspired would sink deeply into our hearts and minds to transform us, to form us, to inform us, to reform us, so that we can worship you more and glory in your name. I pray that this morning in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, my goal is that we start with asking a couple major questions. And again, the important part of this is we're talking about a specific psalm every Sunday so that we can have practice. And I want this practice to be more this way than this way. Practice facilitating what is going on in the psalm, what is happening, what are the psalms talking about, what is the author trying to communicate to us. So I'm going to ask the question, what is there? I'm going to observe. Then I want to interpret, what did it mean? So what can it mean? And this is the level that we're going to get into. I've tried to structure it in a way that helps to emphasize some of the contrasts in this, and that's what I'm done there. This is not, what you see on the screen is not the only way to read this. It's not the only structure here. This is not the ESV authorized version. This is the Pastor Thad thinking this is the most helpful for me. So we're going to interpret what did it mean, what does it mean, and then we're going to ask, so what does it mean for us? Please, while we're going through this, and we're asking these questions of one another, of the text, of what does it mean, those kind of things, don't get to this too quickly. And this is part of what you'll maybe hear this or you'll read this often. We need to slow down with the text. That means a lot of different things. Often it means don't get here too quick. Because we go right into, oh, this word is this, and that means for me that I need to, well, eventually, but slow down with a little bit. There's a lot more going on. So it'd be like, my son likes throwing things, and occasionally there's little pebbles. Like, this application should hit you pretty heavy in some places. It's a difference of my son coming up and be like, Dad, it's a kernel of corn. Bing! Like that's gonna hit me different than, hey Dad, check out this boulder that I found in the backyard. Whoa, right? That's gonna hit me and it should blow me over. Whether it's with conviction or whether it's with the weight of God's glory or whether it's whatever, when we jump ahead to the what does this mean for me in 2022 and all these things, it might be like a bing, and it's supposed to be a thwomp or whatever that other sound effect is. It's like a really heavy weight landing. So I don't want to miss that there's some pretty big, heavy things that God's word is trying to apply to our hearts. All right. So first Psalm, what do we do, even before we get to this, what do we do when we come to a new book? What are some helpful questions to ask of a new book? Okay, you're already ahead of me. No, that's wonderful. I was going to let that one sit for a second. Okay. I'm there. Okay, so author. Wow, somebody's done this before. When? Yeah, to whom it was written, all those kind of things, what context they were sitting in, all those kind of things. So what do we know about this particular psalm? Of many of the psalms, we're not sure of the author. Most likely it's David, just because he has written most of them. The audience, again, the time period. If it's David, if it's not, we have other questions. There's a chunk of time that's probably going to be in. But if it's David, what time period are we talking in?
1450 and 430.
Well, let's narrow that down just a little bit, because David's probably.
I'm saying that's what
Oh,
my
okay. So that's,
Bible says.
1400 is usually the Exodus, so that's when the people of Israel are leaving Egypt, coming into the 40 years of wilderness. That's usually 1450 to 1410. So they're coming into the promised land. David is probably around 1050. So we'll give or take, that's about the approximate time. And he's writing to a people that just saw King Saul, right? And right before that, they saw the time period of the judges. So they're having these new thoughts of our kingdom that God promised from a long time ago is finally landing. Tuck that away, because the judges was, the time period of the judges was kind of thematically understood by what verse in Judges? You guys remember the very last?
You did what was right in their own eyes.
Thank you. The people did what was right in their own eyes. That's kind of the backdrop. And now we're getting into this psalm, and it's the first psalm of the whole 150 psalms that are importantly arranged, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. I just wanted to bring up, if this is something that you're going to try to do with other family members or even newer believers, if you're a newer believer and haven't really chunked through the psalm, I would highly recommend not laminating posters. That's not it, but highly recommend this group called the Bible Project. This is I think it's like a 5 or 6 minute video where they kind of go through the format, the structure, so that we have those mental hooks to place, oh, this is what this is talking about. So the first book of Psalms, they say Psalm 3 to 41, really 1 and 2 are introductions to the whole book, and we'll see how that is framed in a second when we get into that. Any other questions we need to ask as kind of the introductory as we get into these things?
Did you say the Bible Project? You can go online and
Yes.
find it?
They have a zillion videos. It's called the Bible Project. Yes, and if you want, you can either email me or I'll get a snapshot of people that are here and try to send out emails with those kind of resources. The Bible Project.
Well, you got who, what, when, we know where,
Good.
why, motivation, purpose.
Yeah, what's the purpose? What is he trying to really communicate to his audience? And again, we can just say, well, in this one psalm, but we also need to say in one psalm as it's introducing, 150 songs that are the hymn book of the ancient Israelite nation, and by continuation, in covenant, the hymn book of God's people. So why is he writing this? So we need to kind of tuck those away as we're looking at what is his purpose, what's his point, what's his intent in trying to get some rock bottom issue answered for his readers or for his singers or for those that are going to hear this probably many, many times a week in their life. Any other questions? All right, let's dive in. Let's actually start doing some fun things. Yes, do it. Erase. Didn't you wish you had like a whiteboard when you were a kid? Okay, sorry. Try to get not too enamored with technology as you use technology. All right, can you guys see this? Can we do the whole? So clean. Okay, somebody want to read it for us? Because it's important that this is not just something that was studied quietly. This was something that was proclaimed, sung maybe. Since I see a singer putting her hand up. No, don't sing it, but read it for us. Thank you.
The whole thing?
Yes, please.
Blessed is the man who walks, not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. In all that he does, he prospers. The wicked are not so, but are like chaff, something, that the wind drives away. Therefore, the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish.
Thank you. All right, let's zoom in, and then we can see what we need to see. If it helps that I tab this out, I'm going to kind of walk through it a little bit, but I want y'all to be helping to answer. What do you see in just verses? Let's just start with 1. What is important about what is being said, how it's being said, the structure, the compare and contrast? We'll get into some of the important ways that work. What do you see?
The progression of movement of the body.
Okay, let's get there, but let's slow down a little bit. One of the helpful professors I had in college was like, not saying English for people, but Americans that read in English. Usually we read sentence by sentence or maybe phrase by phrase. It's like Hebrews, and they had studied at one of the Hebrew speaking seminaries. Anyway, they read word or syllable by syllable. Like they're breaking it down way, way slower. So there is going to be a progression, and we're going to see this as we get to walks, stands, sits. There is going to be that. But that is emphasized also by the counsel, the way, and the seat, which is also emphasized by the wicked, the sinners, the scoffers. So it's a triple set of 3 emphases driving someplace. But before we get to that, what are we talking about?
I think there's a contrast between the wicked and the righteous.
Yes, how is that contrast set up?
The wicked go first and
Slow down. Who's first?
Blessed.
There's a blessed man. And this is one of the, there's a couple of reasons, but this is one of the reasons why the ESV is helpful, because it's following for us in English, which doesn't always exactly follow, but it's following for us a really important key of Hebrew and Greek, which is word order. I'm not trying to get fully grammatical on you, but might be helpful. In English, word order matters for how subjects and verbs go together, and direct and indirect objects and all those other things. We have to put those words in the order in a sentence in order for that meaning to be communicated. In Hebrew and in Greek, because they have declination and different endings that go with subjects, so wherever a word is in a sentence, you know that noun with that ending is the subject. It doesn't matter where it flows. Or in this case, the adjective, doesn't matter where it is in the sentence, it can be what's called fronted. It goes first and you know what noun it's describing. And the point of fronting something is to draw all of the attention, or at least some emphasis, to that word, because it's not the man who does X, Y, and Z is blessed. It's saying, blessed is this man, not that way, but this way. So the emphasis right off the bat is, this should be like, exciting. Okay.
So it's not what's right is not what you think is right, but you gotta walk you cannot walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of scoffers.
Yes.
It ain't what you think is right.
How do you know that? Where do you see that? Help us observe that.
The norm in there at the time was everybody does what they thought was right.
Okay.
What they thought was right may not have been right, because they cannot be sitting in the seat of the scoffers, or stand in the way of sinners, or walk in the counsel of the wicked.
Yes, that's really important. So there's a man who's blessed, not by doing this, nor by that, nor by that. Then what is he blessed in? Right? That's exactly. I love that question. You're helping us get to what is the blessing coming in? Is it? And this is going to be a really important question that we're going to get to in a second when we get to the tree. What is the tree simile doing? That figurative language. Is he blessed in his obedience, or is his obedience the fruit of his blessing? Way different ways to think about this. And what that is asking us, is this blessing, is that a prescriptive, as in, if you do X, Y, and Z, this will come, and then we're getting into a little bit of interpretation and setting up some application, or is this a descriptive? I know I'm writing other things, but is it saying, here's what the blessed man is, here's what he's like, here's what he does, and then by interpretation and application, that would be for us, so go and do likewise. You follow the difference? So just float that in the back of your
There's
brain.
intention there. He's intentionally making his walk, his direction of life. He's doing it with intentionality
Yes, where do you see that?
in walks.
Yes. There's walking here, and the intentionality of the blessed man is now, let's get to the contrast. So this is one of the ways, a big fancy thing in Hebrew poetry, in all poetry, is called parallelism.
It's in English too.
Yeah. I know. But the reason I emphasize it, because in English poetry, that operates much less on a level of these two things, see how they work together, see how they compare contrast, see how these two ideas build off of each other. That's almost the entire way that Hebrew poetry works. We're thinking poetry, I think of like rhyme and nice la 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 la, like that kind of meter. And that's not only because this is translated from Hebrew to English, we're not going to find that if we're looking for that kind of poetry function and therefore meaning. So yes, thank you.
It
That's
could have
it.
rhymed in Hebrew though.
It does, and just because it's not a Hebrew lesson, yeah,
Right.
we'll get there. There are some words that we need to hear, but we'll get there.
Don't you also, if you put yourself in the author's position in the time and history that he is in, what he remembers is God speaking through Moses, and all the commandments and so forth of when God said, if you do this and if you do that, and if you obey this commandment and if you obey these precepts, then all these blessings will follow, and you won't borrow from everybody else, they'll be borrowing from you, and so forth and so on.
Yes, And so we're gonna see that. That is how we know what is defined as wicked, sinful, and scoffing. But let's get down there in a second. What's the progression then? So the blessed man is who walks a certain way, not in the counsel of the wicked, or stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. What do we need to see there in that progression, in that process? Yes.
I don't know if it's a stretch or not, but how there's advancement in the action walks, and then he sort of slows down and stands and then sits. But then the counsel sort of like advice, ways to have it, and seat is sort of like maybe a lifestyle. And then you have wicked, sinners, scoffers, and scoffers might, like there's a progression there from maybe thoughts, actions, and a worldview. I don't, like sin progresses as you're in it, you end up with a worldview and a lifestyle or habits.
Yeah, it sure
I don't
does. So let's get each one of those three pairs as we go. So walks is, it seems a different kind of progression maybe than we would think of. It's not, this isn't like a progression in exercise, like level of calorie burning. No, but it's walks, stands, and sits. What do we need to see there about a Hebrew mentality? What are they driving at in that kind of progression? We're interpreting a little bit, but what is that progression showing?
You slow down.
Okay, at least we know that there's somebody moving. There's a movement that then he's standing, and then what's the difference between standing and sitting for the Hebrew mentality?
More relaxed. A deeper commitment.
A deeper, yeah, maybe relaxed. We would think this isn't like kicking back on his lazy boy sitting. The sitting would be he's including himself in the group, whatever that group is. Okay. Anytime we're thinking those ideas, we need to double check them with a really important idea of context. Context always guides meaning. It always guides interpretation, and especially application. So what's the context there? Is there some progression that's emphasized in the counsel, in the way, in the seat? Yeah, because he's just walking, he's not walking in the counsel. So he's like walking by here in a group, discussing something that's wicked, and then he stands to listen a little bit longer, and then he sits down to include himself in this ongoing, maybe this discussion. Well, like how you brought out, it's not just at the level of let's do this, but the way that that's included in the thinking about the world, the worldview.
It's also a matter of how sin draws you into itself. You know, whether
Yes.
you walk by it and enjoy it, or you're drawn to it and then you're sucked into it
Yes.
totally.
Anybody catch that in those three words? The sinner, the wicked, the sinners, and the scoffers. How does he know they're wicked? They haven't done anything yet. There's just a counsel of them.
But if he's comparing it to the law,
There we go. Because there is a comparison here, and he knows that that's wicked, hopefully, because he has a standard. He's got a really important standard that the standard is, oh right, God said what is right and what is wicked. Then there's a standing in the way of sinners. The difference between the counsel and the way is not just the pathway, as in a stationary, sinful people walk this way. But the way is the word of describing he's walking along the way, the lifestyle that they're inhabiting. The way of thinking, doing, acting, believing, attitude, all of that of the sinners. So the wicked is maybe in the mentality. The sinners gets a little bit deeper, and then they're not only sinning in what they do and think and believe, but they're scoffing at what is right and good. What's the difference between scoffing and sinning? Scoffing is kind of word like mocking, jeering.
Broadcast.
Say that again? Yeah. Scoffing almost has a nature of boasting or bragging. They're bragging about what they're doing and how it mocks what the righteous are, or what the good or what the true is about. They're bragging. They're mocking.
I think they know it's in there and it's a certain kind of awareness. And know about that and not.
Thank you.
Pride.
Yes, it includes pride. Okay, so if this sense of wickedness, because in the Old Testament, even in the law, there's a way that you can break the law but do it from an ignorant understanding. I didn't know X, Y, and Z was, but once I found out, I need to repent and make restitution. Or, this is the fun Deuteronomy example, or I dug a pit and the animal fell in it. I didn't know that was going to be what happened with the pit I dug. It just happened. So that can be included in the level of wicked. Can include, not limited to, but can include, I just didn't know that was wrong. But once I found out it was wicked, it was bad, I needed to do something about that. I can't sit there.
But the scoffers are living and breathing.
Bingo.
They're fully immersed and they believe that is the way.
But once I get to the way of sinners, it's no longer ignorance. It's a habit. It's a pattern. Not only so the way of sinners is they're walking in that way. It's starting to be ingrained. And sitting in the seat is now you're on the council. You're in the committee, right? And you're proud about it. What is another really important thing that I want to make sure we draw out, because this is sometimes we miss it. How many people are we talking about here?
All people.
But
There is
it's
one man.
But it's also, that you can draw the thing to other people.
It is. It's the generalized man, but there's one of them. There's the man. But there's many wicked. There are plural sinners and there are multiple scoffers. In the contrast, again, this is the level of parallelism. We can see a lot of these things. The contrast is that there's a single guy and he's surrounded by wicked sinners and scoffers if he lets himself get there, right? So there's a group, there's a cohort, there's a council, right? There's many, many people.
There's a progression of multiplication of it.
Yeah. Because sin doesn't stagnate.
It's almost like Jesus was standing in the middle of all of his accusations. Everybody was turning against him right there at the end.
Yeah.
Before they crucified him. I mean, that's the way I just all of a sudden looked at it.
Yeah, we're going to get to Jesus in a minute. Please, thank you for getting there, because we always want to make sure we get to Jesus.
Well, it just hit me.
It
Because
is.
my Bible says, instead of man, it says the one.
The one, yeah. we
It's
could-
almost like there's Jesus and we're all going,
No, that's good. Okay. So that's maybe a good segue then, Anna, into unpacking this word a little bit more. What does it mean to be blessed?
It's a reception, it's a personal reception from God. And so the idea starts off with blessing. That's the whole, that's what we're starting off with this. And then instead of all this, our nation needs to really blah, blah, blah. It's saying specifically the person. And so now it's very personal, very direct and applying. It's pointed toward me, each of us.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's helpful. It is.
So
So what
use
is
the word realization. Be blessed is when you physically realize.
yes? What do you realize? What is the blessing? What does it mean to be blessed? Okay, that's a different Hebrew word. Yes. This is the
See, you're like,
yes. That's part of it. That you can understand who God is, the joy, the contentment that comes in knowing God, and we're going to get that down at the end. You guys are too fast. So blessed is a state of being happy. I don't like the word happy personally because I think of that happy joy kind of fakey, like everything's okay.
Well, and that's based on what's happening.
Yes, it's a
And this is far more than that.
Yes.
Because this is beyond what's happening. This is the state of this person, that they have found favor with God
Yes. How do you know that?
because of their walk.
Contentment.
Thank you. And in case you have done the study, this and many other verbs is in what's called the perfect tense. Anybody know anything about the perfect tense?
Continues on.
Say that again.
It continues on, it's ongoing.
Yes. It's not the snapshot. It's it's the completed action with ongoing results. Okay? That's the state, the walking in, that's the state of happiness. It's a completed, it's a fulfilled, it's a enjoying this with ongoing results. Okay? So the perfect is the completed action.
So it would be like in English, what would it be like saying?
The man who walks. Sorry. Let me. It'd be the difference between the snapshot of my family vacation and me showing you the video. Here we went to the beach and here's my kids playing in the water. That's the difference. It's less helpful to go, here's the verb tense in English, like past, present, future. Because our verb tenses don't quite capture the same idea that's getting communicated in that verb tense. Does that make sense? Does that help? The picture versus the video is what he's communicating here.
Right, like you are teaching Psalms now, but Greg Bainey and Stephen Edgins have taught it in the past.
Okay. So yeah, so hopefully that's not just the limited past with no ongoing results, but hopefully that is yes, it's a, but I'm not completed with it yet.
That's perfect.
Okay, past, sure, that's past tense, present tense, future tense. But the perfect is a different one than past, present, future. That's what, in English, we lump almost everything we do into the past, present, future. Perfect tense is, it's done, it's completed, but it continues to have ongoing results and everything of that. So that's what we're trying to get to, that this state of happiness is not a one and done. It's not a, oh, remember the good old days. We were happy then. No, it's, I've been so blessed with God's joy that I have been and will always continue to enjoy the happiness of God. Especially in contrast to those that walk in the counsel of the wicked, stand in the way of sinners, and sit in the seat of scoffers. So what continues? What is the source, or what is the driving? What else do we need to observe about the blessed man? What has anchored or drives his happiness, his joy? Yes.
His delight. The fact that his heart is like happy about the law, like it loves the law.
Good. And I'm trying to emphasize that by the happy, the blessed man is on this side, the wicked is happening over here. So blessed is the man who doesn't do this, but his delight, the blessed man's delight, stays and remains on the law of the Lord. So what is delighting? What is delightful about the law that would be a blessing? Let's maybe start with what's the law? What is he talking about when he says the law? Like, I don't see the rules of, speed limits or stoplights or all of those. Those don't bring me joy on a daily basis, right? Good. Okay. It is the 10. It also in the Psalms, it's used as the whole Mosaic law. Okay? But specifically, we don't want to miss, that is the 10 Commandments. And we also don't want to miss, that's love the Lord your God with all of your heart, mind, and soul, your mind, soul, strength, and body, as Jesus would explain, and love your neighbor as yourself. So there's that really important, it's like we heard a sermon on love recently, that there's that really important vertical love of the Father that you receive, and then because the lavish love of the Father has been put on you, then you can love one another. So that's the blessing, and that's the source of the delight.
Well, it's also anchored in God's faithfulness in that, Psalm 23 is cup overfloweth, and
Yeah.
like the widow's oil, you use out of it, but it never dries up. It's always replenished and always there.
Yes. So that it's a delight that is overflowing.
So where is love the Lord with all your heart and then love your neighbor as yourself in the Old Testament specifically? Did you say?
Deuteronomy
6:4.
Yeah, 6. Right after Deuteronomy 5, which is the reiteration of the law, he gets into Deuteronomy 6. And then he says specifically, and impress these upon your children. Teach them when you rise, when you walk by the way, when you sit along. Right? Can't talk and turn the pages at the same time. But okay, Deuteronomy 6. Thank you. So, Gary, going back to your idea of the faithfulness of the Lord, where is that? What is? I'm getting too. Anybody mind if I erase some of this garble? You're like, no, make it go away.
You can use the whiteboard.
Yeah, that drives me crazy. Not that this is a whole lot better because you guys are like
Next generation.
Okay, let's get back to it. What does this all caps LORD tell us? It is the personal covenant name Yahweh, and it refers to where? What do we get? What's the pinnacle of God communicating His good character with His people? Where do we get the central version? What do we get about who God is that delighting in this God's law would actually be a good thing?
I am who I am.
Okay.
Is that
Yeah.
what you're referring to?
Sure. So when God revealed
Eternal,
Himself,
self-existent God.
Concrete foundation, not shit.
yeah. Okay. Exodus, the burning bush is Exodus 13. I'm not mistaken. No. 6. Thank you. I was going to say 5 or 6. Yeah. 6. Okay. Exodus 6. What else? There's a pivotal scene in the Exodus, in Exodus 34, when, ironically, Moses is up on the mountain receiving the law. You remember what the people are doing down at the base of the mountain? Exodus 33. Hey, Aaron, you're a good craftsman. We've got all this gold laying around. Let's make us an idol. Woo! And then party. Because this is the idol. This is the God that brought us out of slavery. Moses comes down after receiving the law, and he's angry and heartbroken and all other things. But then he goes, what he's received on the mountain is he says, God, let me see your glory. And you remember God says, I can't show you that because you'll be instantaneously combusted like a bug, but I can show you the backside of the reflection of my glory. So he hides Moses in the cleft of the rock. The Lord passes by. And you remember what? Not only does Moses see something, but more clearly he's revealed the very character of God. Remember what God says? Exodus 34:6. Yeah, he says, I am the Lord, the Lord. And he repeats his name, Yahweh. Did I say Exodus or Deuteronomy? I get confused. Sorry.
Which is it?
Exodus. Exodus 34:6. The Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, but who will by no means clear the guilty. That's the pivotal place of God revealing His character in the midst, encapsulated in His glory. And so when we see that, capital L-O-R-D, that's not just the name of the Lord, but that's the covenant name of the Lord, that a covenant God gives to His covenant people to say, this is who I am. I'm a steadfast, loyal, faithful God, especially when we then peel back another layer of the context of when Moses is getting that, especially in the context of his own people finding an idol to worship. And yes, there is punishment for that sin, direct judgment on those that did bow and worship that idol. But God's still a faithful God to his people. So that's a way big discursus on just this one word. But we got to bring that's the reason, because of who God is, that's the reason why delight in his law can actually be enjoying and a blessing. All the other gods of the ancient Near East, they had laws. They had buckets of laws. Not a single one was a delight. The covenant God brings his law, and with it comes his delight. So we can actually delight in that. So what does the delighting in God lead this blessed man to do? Yeah, on his law, he meditates. What does meditate mean? What's a helpful?
Internalize.
Okay, that's good. Roll it over. That's a good one. So much so that it's internalized. Now, when we say, all right, kids, we got to memorize your scripture verse, usually we lump that into, I got to look at it and see, all right, so it sticks in my brain for a test, and then I can forget I ever looked at it once and then just move on in life. But he's meditating, poring over it so much, and he's doing this by day and by night, which don't necessarily means every second of the day, but so often, all the time. This is one of those important figurative language that just is by overemphasis, right? All the time. He's poring over it so that it's saturating his thinking. Is there any contrast to that kind of way, thinking in life? Absolutely. That's the process when Robert preached on this psalm. It's the way that our minds are transformed, and we call that sanctification. But what in this psalm, I'm trying to write 2 words. Sorry. What in this psalm is contrasted to that kind of thinking? Yeah, what he just said. So the blessed man is meditating it versus the sinful men are in the counsel, in the way, in the seat of evil. They're thinking over something else. Yeah.
So meditation is internal and personal. And
it is also that.
And spiritual, but a crummy idol is physical, and you can control it or put it aside or ignore it or change it or melt it down or whatever.
Yeah.
But the meditation is inside you.
Yeah.
And it is forever with you. And that's what God wanted to do, to be more part of our lives and help us understand what's around us.
Yeah, so that's a good point. That the law of God is an external standard that we can then internalize.
What?
And it actually gives life. We're going to see that in a second. Yes. Thank you. Good.
Why do we internalize it? For ethical direction and obedience?
Maybe. Eventually. That's a great consequence. What's here? Because it's delightful. It puts a smile in our heart, right? That's the source. And yes, there is all those other things. So we're going to see that this is a problem up here because it leads to really bad consequences, right? This is not utilitarian ethic. If there's a bad outcome, then it's a bad thing. But there is bad outcomes for sin. That we know that. Great example. Yes, what else?
I have a question. So the walks is perfect tense, and it's like walks, you're not doing that. And meditates, is that perfect tense too?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the
Continuing.
sorry, it's got the continuous result. It's not in the perfect tense, but it's in what's the Hebrew way of writing that ongoing thing is the imperfect. So it's a continuous action. It's not a one action with continuous results.
Okay.
It's an ongoing process.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
But you can say it's sort of like that because
In a way.
when you meditate, it's supposed to bring about what what God really delights in is our doxology or our praise or our worship to Him.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what everything's supposed to lead to.
True. No, that's a good way to put it.
And if we're delighting and meditating in the right stuff, then we're gonna be less likely to be thinking about the wrong stuff.
No, absolutely. That's the best offense against sin is to fill our heads rightly with God's law.
And
So-
I think
I
sin
worry
is
about
not
it in my
fulfilling,
heart.
and meditating on the law is fulfilling. That's what he's trying to explain. He's delighting in it because it is really fulfilling. The law is fulfilling, but sin is never fulfilling. You have to keep going deeper and deeper in whatever you're doing.
Yeah, that's true. And so let's get to the emphasis there is given in how the psalmist gives us these further comparisons in how this delighting in God's law looks, what it means, and what the wicked there. All right, so he is like, this is again going back to the blessed man is like what? Okay. Like a tree. What's the image of the tree there? What about that helps us to clarify the man who or the person who delights in God's law and meditates on it?
Could that be the tree
Not yet.
that was in the Garden of Eden?
It's an image of that, absolutely.
It's a structure. It's
Rooted.
Right?
Yeah, so I'm trying
Planted
to
or rooted?
we're slowing down. We'll get there. Yeah, it's planted by streams of water. It's rooted, but a tree is living. Why am I? Okay. Oh, good.
It has to have water too.
Just as many.
Okay, tree is living, and we're gonna get the contrast down here. The wicked are chaff, dead. Okay.
Think of a tree as having, not hurricanes and tornadoes, but having some stability.
Yeah, it's got stability. Good. Because it's planted, rooted, anchored, not just to something stubborn, but to the source of its life. Again, I don't remember who was saying it, the law is an external source that is life-giving when internalized. The tree is anchored to it's rooted into the source of its life. But here's the difference in that image. The tree is not just a hose that the water can flow out to something else, right? That could be a different image. The tree takes in the water, and because of the nourishment that it has, it actually produces something. Here we see that it yields its fruit in its season. And so there's a significance there that the same season of heat, this is the season of produce and of harvest, but in order to get there, so I've heard from the Middle East seasons, you have to go through the hot summer. The same hot summer that produces the chaff. The same hot summer that dries up the kernel, that the wind blows it away. This tree, because it's anchored in the stream of life, life-giving nourishment, produces fruit. Yes, Steve?
Does the tree delight in the stream?
Well, no, because it's a tree and this is a simile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the point. Is it,
Yes.
Is it the way that you think a tree might feel about the stream is the way the man feels about the law. And it's life-giving
And because it's
empowers in
life-giving,
them.
absolutely, because it's life-giving, there's fruit there. And that's incredible. So the result, where contrasted before, the wicked's result is they progress in their wickedness from being wicked to sinning to scoffing. The progression of the fruitful man is prospering. And this is actually another way of, I don't know why my pen is messing up, but the prospering is another way of emphasizing the blessing. Blessing is not stagnant. The blessing of the Lord that comes in delighting in his law is meaning you're going to want to know and do and enjoy more. The wicked are not so. What else do we see here in these next two, verse 4 and 5 with the wicked?
4 4, 5, and 6 in my Bible are all sinful.
Well, these two specifically, I must be running out of. That's okay.
When it says the wind drives away, you mean like their life that they're going through?
Well, yeah, so the image there, I haven't harvested or done this process in the Middle East, but they would go up on the top of a high hill. I think Robert described this in the sermon a little bit. And they would have the kernels of wheat, and they would beat the tar out of it until the wheat kernel, the berry, the outer husk, shell, breaks, and they throw it up in the air so the wind can blow off the external husk, which is the chaff. That shell gets blown away in the wind, and what falls down onto the harvest floor is the good internal wheat berry. That's what we can then you grind it and you make flour out of it, right? So and all the other barley, rye, all those other seeds that they would have, that's the same process. So the chaff, the wind is driving that away. It's pushing that out of the beneficial, the useful part of a society. What that is pointing at, to interpret that a little bit, is there is going to be the chaff driving away is paralleled with judgment. There's going to be a temporal judgment. It's going to be pushed out of usefulness because it's not doing the purpose. That person is not doing the purpose that they're intending. And that's exactly what these next two lines anchoring or paralleling back earlier. The sinners in the congregation of the righteous, they're going to be huddled and assembled, counseling, gathering, scoffing on their own. No longer in the righteous. They're going to be separated. The wheat from the chaff, in a sense, are going to be separated. So,
with observation.
Yes.
You've got the tree, which is solid, it's rooted, it's big, it's dense, it's heavy. And you've got the chaff, which is like hollow.
Yeah.
Goes away.
Yeah.
It's just a really interesting comparison between.
It is. And there's a tree, and there's lots of chaff, and that's what we saw earlier. There was the sinners grouped together, huddle up. Ironically, in their congregation, their group of wicked, they're cohorting together to do works. The very next Psalm, Psalm 2, is going to start off, why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? That word plot is the same word that we saw up here, meditate. In a different context, the man who meditates on something positive, on the law of God, the rich, life-giving law, is going to bear fruit. The group that cohort together, meditate on the evil that they can do, are plotting. It's the same word for meditate and plot. That the nations, when they get together, the peoples, when they gather and plan destruction and wickedness and the outpouring of their negative ideals, their bad worldview, that's where that's going to go later. And so chapter 1, Psalm 2 are building a structure of the individual man is going to stand strong because he's anchored in God's law. All the wicked, all these levels of society and systems of whatever are going to continue to try to do the same thing in the wrong direction to the wrong degree. They're going to be meditating, but on their evil, on their sinfulness, on their scoffing at the wicked. And that's going to put them in horrible different places to really bad degrees. All right, let's wrap up, find out what the Lord knows, and see how this points to Jesus. What does the Lord understand? What does it mean that the Lord knows the way of the righteous?
Like he's in relationship with them? Is that what the knows means?
Yes. That word knows is not ever simply informational. It is almost always, even if by degree and context, relational. It's the same word that's used in a lot of different contexts for Adam knew his wife intimately, relationally, and there's fruit from that knowledge. Okay, so the Lord knows the way. He deeply, personally knows the intimate details of the ways of the righteous, the way of him. But the way of the wicked, there will be an end. It will come to that end. What does this help us understand, if we can zoom out now with a whole psalm? What does this help us understand about Jesus? Where is Jesus in this psalm? Somebody started off with it, and I rudely interrupted them and told them to wait, that we'll get there later. Sorry.
Okay.
I
Yes,
would say the result of sin is death.
it
And
is.
the only way to escape that is through your faith in Jesus Christ and receive the covenant of grace.
Absolutely true. So because there has been one who has perfectly and fully delighted in the law of the Lord, and he is then the perfect, fully righteous man who has not said, all right, buddy, you better earn it harder tomorrow. He's simply given that righteousness to his children, who then receive it by faith and believe more on him than we did. That is incredible. That's beautiful. That's shallow in terms of how big this psalm emphasizes that, because of, I think somebody else brought up the idea of the tree builds back to the fruitfulness in the garden. That we were built to be fruitful and to be free in how we can enjoy the good gifts of God. And the fall and the curse. And so our default state no longer is to be fruitful trees. Our default state is to want to hang out with the scoffers and the mockers and the wicked. But then Jesus comes and renews. He's recreating us. The new Adam comes to give us new life again so that we can be fruitful trees. So we can take this little picture, like the tree planted by the streams of water, and say, yes, there is clear pictures of Eden. But our heart is not there anymore. Our heart is sinful and wicked and distorted beyond how I can even imagine it. But because of the grace of Christ, I am and can be and will be perfectly restored to be anchored to that stump of Jesse, that tree whose root is always tapped in to the life-giving Spirit. How else does this help us see? What do we do with that? What can be some of the other applications?
I think it speaks of internal attitude versus outward performance.
Where?
Well, when it says he delights in the law of the Lord, it doesn't say that he fastidiously follows the law of the Lord. The Pharisees did that. And there are plenty of people that follow the law, but they don't have a delight in it. It's like they say about a military family, they do the right things for all the wrong reasons.
Yes, we do. No, that's a great point, though. There's a whole big difference, and those of us with children know this. When I tell my kids to do something, they can do it with a really crummy attitude. They followed the law. My law is not to God's law, but they followed it, but they got some crummy attitudes. But to delight in the law is going to drive us to obey, but to see how it's enjoyable. Totally different things, and there's a lot of good places that we can go with this. This is beautiful and life-giving because of how Jesus gives us the fullness of life, and out of that we obey and delight. That's a totally different mindset than do, earn, achieve, perform, and eventually maybe have a smile on our face because we worked hard. That's not delighting.
Well, we know that God, there's blessings to be received from the psalm, but we also want to know that in the end, God is going to make things right. We want to know that God is just. We want to know that there is going to come a day when he will drive away that shaft.
Yeah.
When no longer will there be that counsel, will there be scoffers, that the wicked will perish.
Yeah.
And we want that, whether we want to
Yes.
say it out loud or not, but we want to know that God is going to fulfill all of his law.
And so the Lord does know the way of the wicked. The way of the righteous. The Lord also knows the way of the wicked and knows how he will bring judgment. And we'll get to a couple other psalms that bring that much fuller weight to the God, I have to trust that you're going to bring your vengeance. And that's a heavy thing. But that's a good thing because it's God, the true righteous judge, doing that, not what I think they deserve. Way different attitude. So that's a good place to end and wrap up. Let me just say, I would love feedback. Next week, not this Stephen, but Steve Hutching is going to be teaching us. There's going to be a similar, just a handout like that with a verse on it. We're going to look at Psalm 8. So if you want to look ahead and read, Psalm 8 is going to be next week's psalm. I'm going to hope that we can continue to practice asking good, observing questions, asking good, interpreting questions to help us then see where this much bigger, richer, thicker application can mean a lot more for actually enjoying God's word and helping one another in that, so that we are a group of trees, not just a bunch of counsel with scoffers. Let's pray. God, thank you for your word this morning. I pray you continue to refine us, help us delight in you and your good law. I pray this now as we go into worship, that we would delight in you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, thank you all. Thanks, Stephen.
I use that, sir.